I think I'm here. Well, I should minimize. Now I don't know how to minimize the, there we go. That'll do. I've probably done this the wrong way. So I'm completely new to GeoMob. I was kind of nominated to give a talk. So I didn't know there was a competition. So yeah, forgive me if this is a little semi-prepared. And thanks, Juan. It was a fascinating talk. I could see lots of parallels with. I've been living in Lebanon. I'm in the UK now. For the last 8-9 years, I've been in Lebanon. A very familiar kind of navigational system there in terms of like informal addresses. Right. So I'm going to talk about draw your own geography, which is the kind of working title for a tool that I'm working on with the Office for National Statistics in the UK in the data viz department. I will say a little bit about myself. So I'm actually an architect by training, but I've been working the last 10 years in infographics and data visualization, and I'm leading data visualization work for the UK 2021 census, which is the census itself just been completed. And within a year or so, we're going to start releasing data, but we're working kind of hard behind the scenes on the kind of data viz products and tools we'll be putting out with that release. So a little bit about what I do, my background. Obviously, I was just saying that I'm working on data viz for census. Before that, actually, I got into moved from architecture to infographics, working on the topic of Palestine, actually, which suddenly is very much in the news these past few days. So we have like there's an organization called Visualizing Palestine that's been going for about 10 years. Do check them out, visualizingpalestine.org. Also on Twitter and all your Facebooks and everything. And through that, really, I got into this kind of mapping, historical mapping, and that very much kind of segued me into the kind of work I'm doing now with the Office for National Statistics. So back to the day job. I think hopefully this will be quite a short presentation. I'll see how it goes. So Census 2021, what does it include? I mean, it's basically a survey of every household and communal establishment in, well, England and Wales, not technically the UK, England, Wales, Northern Ireland as well, not Scotland. Long story to do with COVID. Usually it's every 10 years, all of the nations of the UK. And what does that involve? We're talking 60 million people, more than 50 variables. And obviously, we're not releasing data on every single individual in England and Wales, but we're releasing data at very small geographies. So basically about 180,000 statistical neighborhoods called output areas. And most of the variables and even, what do you call it, cross tabulations of those variables are available at that kind of tiny geographic level. And just to say what kind of variables they are, I mean, it's obviously, the number of people. We're talking, kind of age, sex, ethnicity, employment, whether people are kind of in employment, self-employed, unemployed, housing tenure, like what kind of housing people are living in, whether they're renting or own it, all kinds of variables that can be cross-tabulated in a way that's just not possible with kind of the normal kind of surveys you get, the rest of the time. So these kind of 10-year censuses are like a big opportunity to really, discover things about the country and, how it's changing. And just to give an idea of these kind of output areas. So, this is what, if you're zooming in here, these are statistical neighborhoods. Actually, these are bigger than output areas. These are super output areas you're looking at. And you've got all of these tiny things that usually, you report this by a larger district, which is the blue lines. But, not everything kind of neatly fits into that rubric of kind of these neighborhoods, slightly larger neighborhoods, districts. So the question most people would ask, can I get data for my town? And that's not always as straightforward as it might sound, or my area or my neighborhood. And there's actually, in fairness, like if you go to NOMIS, which is the service that holds the previous census data for the Office for National Statistics, they do have a lot of standard geographies. But even these ones won't necessarily capture that question of my town, my village, my neighborhood. And yeah, so actually a lot of people in the kind of user testing or user research that's being done are coming back with this kind of similar problem. You know, I can get data from my district, my ward, which is a smaller electoral area, but the geography I'm interested in is a catchment area for a school, or I'm interested in some other kind of geographic cut of information that's just not available. So they're saying, how can we kind of draw our own and build that up out of those tiny little neighborhood building blocks? So they want these kind of lookups and boundaries to draw their own geography. So this is like a problem I've been trying to work on. So this is what the tool looks like. I don't know how good this will show on people's screens, depending on internet connections. But basically what this tool allows you to do so far, it's very much a work in progress and something we want to get feedback on and develop much more by the time the data is coming out for the census. And basically what it lets you do, it lets you find an area. You can draw a boundary, where you can actually upload your own boundary as well. It's a little bit, it's not working perfectly. So you can choose like a town that doesn't necessarily have data. You can make a basic profile. This is using the NOMIS API to get a bit of data. We could get much more interesting data. And then you can also download a lookup. So that will basically just give you a list of all of the codes for those statistical neighborhoods which exist inside that area that you've drawn. And then you can also download it in the form of a boundary as well. So how does it work? I actually would have loved to kind of chat through the code sort of behind it and how we've kind of built it up, but I'll just kind of share the basic kind of libraries that we used. It's all kind of JavaScript based, obviously. So it uses Svelte as the framework, which is I've found is excellent for building kind of quick kind of proof of concept apps, as well as kind of starting to turn them into kind of production. Mapbox GLJS, which I don't think there's anything quite like it open source for vector-based maps. Unfortunately, it's gone closed source version 2, but we're kind of using version 1 of that for now, because we're using our own tiles, which I can try to explain if anyone has questions. Turf.js, which is basically geo analysis, can do kind of calculations in JavaScript, like areas and all kinds of kind of polygon operations, and hosted at the moment on GitHub pages. I think that's pretty much everything in the box. And yeah, so we've kind of, and I should say, just in relation to this, that the boundaries that you see on here, if it's of interest, these are all kind of vector tiles that we've created, that we host statically, that kind of hold all this information. So we've got I think there's polygons and centroids that kind of live in a vector tile stack, which lets us kind of very quickly navigate to smaller geographies and just load those bits, those polygons that are relevant, that allow us to actually calculate in the browser. I'm going to move on. So that's all. Everything that's happening is front end, so it's all client side in the browser. Response so far. So this is already kind of out there. It was kind of a hypothesis that people needed this tool. and it seems that it's something that's potentially very useful for a handful, very small group of people, kind of engaged through, Twitter's typically the way that I'm sharing this stuff at the moment. This is kind of part of the user research, really. And as a team, we're generally, trying to use this as a platform for user research, but maybe not ideal. But anyway, it's an interesting entry point for kind of connecting with communities such as yourselves. And yeah, I was kind of surprised, actually. Like, I mean, we've had other things that have been shared a lot. This was, I felt, very niche, but there was a lot of kind of questions and ideas and positive feedback coming for it. So that's kind of allowing us to kind of, vouch for this kind of internally within the organization and kind of develop it into something better. And I'll stick a call to action on the end. Have a play with it, fork the code if you like, feel free. If you're working on UK geography, play with the code. It's up on GitHub. And share any ideas you have, like either on this call or connect with me on Twitter. And happy to have a conversation there as well. So you can access the tool in its current form at bit.ly/draw-geo, and that'll bring you to the GitHub page. And you can probably figure out where the repository is based on the GitHub URL if you're into that stuff. So I didn't share that. And that is the end of the presentation. Thank you, everyone.
That is so awesome. That is just stunning, Ahmad. So I've got a few questions for you. First of all, for anybody who is interested, Mark Tobias points out that there is an open source fork of the old Mapbox.gl JavaScript library, which is called maplibra-gl-js. And they're going to carry on developing that. So there is a route that doesn't go into the closed source of Mapbox if people want that.
Yeah, and I should say that's very much something that we've got our eyes on, and at the moment we're using the latest version of V1 Mapbox. We use our own vector tiles for basically everything, so to us it doesn't make sense to go into the kind of closed world of V2. Right. But definitely, yeah, MapLibra is kind of what we got our eyes on to transition to when we can.
So a question, I don't know whether it's Martin or Michael Maines, asks, how complicated would it be to adapt this to historical census data, census data from elsewhere, thinking about other countries and other geographies? I mean, presumably the principles would work.
Yeah, so the idea was actually kind of, well, like inspired by, let's say, by something that's built by the New York City Planning Department. So they have a tool that's just for the boroughs of New York that allows you to build up like reports based on smaller areas. It's doing something quite similar to that, but it's kind of built, I'll say, from scratch. But I mean, we're using all these kind of libraries to build what we're doing. I don't see any reason why not. It's basically based on the principle of how it works is you see the, what's it called, the polygons. What it's actually calculating on the basis of is the centroids. So there's population weighted centroids for each of those, what's it called, the output areas. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that, apart from the fact that it's much quicker to calculate with points inside a polygon, is that that's also the preferred method of kind of building lookups. It's a weird thing with ONS is that we don't usually provide this kind of services data. We say, well, the data you get is the data you get for the official geographies. But if you want to build your own, geographies, then this is the preferred method, which is to use population weighted centroids. So that's what it's doing. So essentially, if you had a bunch of polygons and a bunch of centroids for any given location, there's no reason it couldn't be adapted. For building the profiles, it's doing something a bit funny behind the scenes, which is quite specific. It's kind of clustering. Basically, you have three layers of these kind of statistical output areas. You have what are called output areas, LSOAs and MSOAs. I won't go into what those are, and they kind of fit inside each other. So if you have a whole one of the larger geographies, it looks up that. So you basically just so it's on the API. You're requesting fewer areas basically. Right. So there's some funny gubbins in there you'd have to kind of pull out for some other to use it in another context. But you know, the code is on there, and if you can decipher it, you're welcome to make use of it.
And what you get as an output from this, if I've understood you correctly, Ahmad, is you get effectively the output area identifier codes, unique identifiers, which you could then throw at tables of data to pull the statistics out of them.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's exactly what it is.
So you can't. I mean, if you wanted to do an area profile, you'd need to say what variables you wanted, and then chuck the identifiers from your geography at those variables to find out.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And we are exploring the possibility of kind of bringing a tool like this into the. Oh, I've got some nice background noise now. Basically, we're exploring the possibility of bringing a tool like this actually into the kind of user journey on the main website when they're getting data from the kind of GUI, you know, the graphical entry point, that they might actually be able to also do this. But like I said before, it's not hugely likely that we'll have that because of this issue of the sensitivity around kind of ad hoc geographies, let's say, and then that being like, you know, this is official data for this ad hoc geography.
Okay. Giuseppe Salazzo wanted everybody to know that he's very excited that he appeared on one of your slides. So I just thought I'd give him a shout out there, so he'd be.
There we go.
There we go. Everyone can.
Well, this is actually why I'm on GeoMob.
Exactly, I was about to say, it is Giuseppe who was the one who first spotted what you were doing and said, this is fantastic, we should get this guy on GeoMob. So this is how Twitter works, this is how GeoMob works. Ahmad, thank you very much.